back in bold. Another beautiful day in the Dominican Republic, but this time I'm in Santiago. I'm inland in the valley. I'm not sure what the name is, but it's literally the best place in the world for cigars right now. It's the king of tobacco, this town. Every freaking restaurant you can smoke in, cigar lounges everywhere. Tamboril, I went there to check out Luis. Shout out my guy with La Pure. All the factories, so it's just countless factories rolling cigars, bringing the tobacco in. And I'm liking it a lot different than Donroe down in the south where beautiful beaches are. A lot more chill, relaxed, good people. I think it could be a nice place for many, especially if people like Medellin. I'm really starting to think this reminds me a lot of Medellin. I mean, super similar, but you're right next to the USA. You know, you got way better beaches, obviously, than Colombia. And Brian Sampson, another Latam connoisseur, a man that's done a lot of business in these lands. My friend, we're going to talk about Plugg Technologies today, but tell me, who are you? What are you doing? How are you?
Yeah, man, what's up? Excited to be on the pod and following on Instagram. I live in Hawaii, so totally other side of the globe, tropics. But as you said, a lot of time, actually over a decade now, doing business in Latin America. So excited to shoot the shit, talk about it.
I'm surprised you still have hair doing business with the Latinos down here, man. It's freaking absolute mind blown how it even works down here. I've actually been quite successful with someone in Argentina. So my girlfriend, I think she runs a good, clean, functioning business, even with that economy. I mean, absolute madness what the Argentines get up to with the economy. But no, we're gonna get into it. But first, my friend, Hawaii. I see everywhere that they don't want any non-native Hawaiians there, and they get out of the country, and it's dumb expensive, or get out of the island. What's the prognosis on what's happening in Hawaii in 2026?
Yeah, it's absurdly expensive, but the good thing is for me, I lived in California for a decade, originally from the Midwest, but I lived in California for a decade, San Francisco for about 5 years. So like the pricing wasn't like crazy because I was coming from San Francisco, right? So I was already kind of braced for that. But I think similar to what I imagine you're doing, if you can make US dollars and do it in a different place, it's kind of that same mindset, only the threshold's a lot higher here in Hawaii. So I mean you can't you can't live off $2,000, a month in Hawaii or less. Um, but for me, I'm basically making mainland money and living in Hawaii. And that's really key. Uh, you're either a small business person that's doing pretty well here, or you're making money from the mainland. There's really no major companies here. And aside from like the CEOs who are paid well, there's no Fortune 500s. Like the corporate climate is as small as it gets. Everybody knows each other. And I'm talking about Oahu, which is the biggest island, 1 million out of the 1.4 million people. But there's really not a lot of like corporate jobs. So you either have to be super entrepreneurial, either uh, like I've got a couple small businesses I got off the ground, a cleaning company, a locksmith company, that's serving Oahu. But my real money is coming from nearshoring. And if I didn't have that, Hawaii would be insanely expensive to live.
Yeah, the what about the whole they hate non-native people I see all the time, and oh, tourists go home even though their economy is a lot of tourism. Is that fake news? Is that or do you feel welcome there? Do you feel okay living there or no?
I think like anywhere, I'm from Chicago originally, and there's like places in the city you don't go to, right? It's just like Oahu, there are places that you just kind of stay away from because you're not going to be the most welcome. But otherwise, I mean, I've lived in Hawaii really since 2017, so a long time. Haven't felt like that really ever. Uh, but there's also a lot of transient people here. So I've got 2 kids, so we're in kind of the family area. But Hawaii's got a ton of military. It's got all 6 branches when you count the Space Force, right? So it's really transient here. So like people come for 3 years, they leave, that's a lot of the military contracts. FBI is here, State Department, NSA, so a lot of people kind of come, they've got young kids. So we're kind of in this area, just like that. But if I was, say, like 26 years old, I'd probably be living in Waikiki, which is like a fun place. There's stuff going on there. But by the time I moved to Oahu, I wasn't in my 20s anymore, so I didn't really experience that.
I've not been a big fan of island life, but I've been quite impressed with Dominican Republic because I think the tariffs are somewhat manageable and they get a ton of mainland goods from USA, and it's not I'm not living at $2,000 a month, okay? I'm not just on the start of the digital nomad life, but I don't want to pay, freaking dumb prices for a bottle of French wine, right? Like it doesn't make sense to my brain, and that's the case in Hawaii. A lot of that stuff is coming in by the boat, so it's super expensive. I mean, a freaking sandwich at the grocery store, I bet, is what, $7, $10. So tell me, like a budget for you said that guy, late 20s, early 30s, non-family, just a solo dolo type of dude. Who's he got to spend like 10 grand to live good in Hawaii now, or is it a little less than that?
So, like for someone like myself, I've got 2 kids. You got to do private school because Oahu's, and I'll talk about the single guy in a second, but just to kind of set a baseline, so so it means like I've got a mortgage, I've got 2 kids in private school, and then groceries for a family of 4, 2 cars, kind of like all the trappings, right? Once all the stuff I never had, like I remember when I was 24 in Chicago, and I probably could have lived off like $900 a month, I mean, it's like crazy how this all happens. Um, but if I wanted to like live a moderate expenses, but like still have some fun, you could rent a 1-bedroom in Waikiki for about $1,500 a month. You're probably spending $1,000 a month on food. If it was a low cost place, probably 400. But Hawaii, like, by the way, if you know where to find $7 sandwiches, let me know because they're more like 17. And then going out, having fun. But the nice thing about these tropical places, and being in the DR, is you don't want to be indoors all day. There's so much to do just outside. Swimming, surfing, scuba, snorkeling, hiking. Like most of those are free. So you just kind of spend a lot of time kind of outdoors. Because who wants to move to Oahu or the DR and just watch TV all day?
Okay, so 4 or 5 thousand a month, and you can still live pretty decent as a single guy in Hawaii.
I think so, yeah.
I mean, that's the price. Keep going.
Yeah, which aligns because the salaries are not very good here. So I think people that are probably watching this are, I'd imagine, skewing more entrepreneurial, like nomads, entrepreneurs, people that can kind of live anywhere. Um, yeah, I think Hawaii is a great spot for that. The issue is always the local salaries, I mean, if you can live off of 4 or 5 thousand bucks a month, that sounds great. But the problem is your job is gonna pay you exactly that too. That's it's not like San Francisco where people can make 200K and it's not a big deal. Oahu, everybody kind of pays like 60, 70K, and that $4 or $5,000 in expenses, you're kind of redlining every month.
Yeah, it's just fascinating, the whole cost of living topic because it's becoming similar numbers in like the top places you want to be in Latin America. I mean, you want to be the Mexico Cities, the Rios, the Buenos Aires. Like, if you want to live a good Western type lifestyle, you got to be spending $4 or $5,000 a month now. It's not like in the previous times, which I assume we're going to talk about. We're going to get to the topic that while you're on, but where you can live for a king for off 2 grand. Yes, still like some tier 2 cities, tier 3, of course, Hakuna Matata. And if you want to live like a local and not have like certain Western type conveniences, you can live for dirt cheap. Okay. But I think a lot of people had this misconception now that, oh my God, I go down to Latin America with $2,000, $3,000 and I'm a king. No, bro. Like to live that big top tier, Western developed type lifestyle, you're going to need, almost the same as you would in a lot of major cities, right? So in USA. But anyways, my friend, let's get to the meat, to the potatoes of this thing too. So you're doing Plugg Technologies, which is basically trying to capitalize on the nearshoring that has been happening, right? Where they're trying to bring all the factories and work and stuff out of Southeast Asia, China, and getting talent, technology people to work in USA type companies, which is great because I mean I have a lot of contractors for what I do. I've found a couple decent ones in Colombia, Brazil, Argentina. I think now the salaries are gotten too high for them to really compete in the cost of living. But mostly my best people are in Southeast Asia. I actually had a lot of good ones in Kenya, but they would be amazing and then they would drop off the face of the earth. I said, what the hell? They're the Savannah Silicon they're trying to build in Nairobi. But I still think the Southeast Asia ones, the Vietnam people, my Vietnam bros are amazing, are the best. Now tell me about these Latinos and tell me about Plugg Technologies because I have my preconceptions and my history of doing business with them that has made it very difficult for me to keep doing business with them.
Yeah. So I love the global element here because I've got some opinions, and I'm excited to chop it up a little bit, and maybe we'll even disagree a little bit. So what kind of got me here is I did investor backed entrepreneurship. So I raised about $2 million to build a business, really focused on like fintech. I was living in San Francisco. How do we build software for fintech companies, right? And raised $2 million from this investor. And I couldn't really make it work in San Francisco. It's just not enough money to do anything. So I had done like a solo backpack trip to Latin America, a few years prior. I did, stayed in hostels and all that, went to Buenos Aires, took the ferry to Uruguay, and then I did Machu Picchu and Chile. So more like southern Latin America, right? And really liked it, thought, I mean, gosh, this is like 15 years ago by now, but you could get a lot for your money. It was insane. But funny enough, my very first hour, I don't know if you want me to tell the story, but my very first hour in Argentina, I got mugged. And, this is a travel centric podcast, so I'm sure people are familiar with all the scams. But, I landed, at Ezeiza, which is like way far away for those who've never been. It's like a night, like they've got another airport, Jorge Newbery, which is much closer. But if you kind of want to fly like Latin America flights, but if you're flying, from the States, you're going to go to Ezeiza, and it's like 90 minutes away. And I'm like, of course I got to afford a taxi, but I kind of wanted to, like do it the local way. So I did the bus. It was like 75 cents or something, to go like a 90-minute bus ride. Drops me off somewhere kind of by like Casa Rosada, which is like somewhat central. And my hostel was in San Telmo, which is south of the city. And it's like maybe a 2 mile walk, more or less. So I've got this like big backpack and I've got a laptop bag. And I'm like walking, and it's like 9 a.m., because I did the red eye. And by the way, I should mention, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3". I don't sleep well on airplanes. So, San Francisco to Lima, layover, Lima to Buenos Aires. I mean, I'm fried, I've been up for like a good 24 hours. So I'm not as cognitively sharp, as I normally am. And it's like 9 a.m. And I don't know if this sounds what you've seen, but it was like quiet. Like there weren't a lot of people out,
It's mental illness in Argentina. They don't freaking do anything until like 10 a.m. You know what I mean? They sleep. Oh, I can't stand it. I hate it so much. That's the worst thing. You can't find a cafe open at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock, God forbid. Palermo finally is starting to get some open, but it's the one thing I cannot stand about them. It's mental illness.
Yeah, yeah, you're right, you're right. There's this yeah, and they've got more psychiatrists, I think, anywhere than yeah, anywhere in the world.
Per capita, yeah, that's the
Yeah,
most.
yeah, it's wild, yeah. Everyone's dealing with something out there. But anyway, I'm, kinda walking and, maybe like a mile away, there's nobody around, and, and all of a sudden this kid must have been like, I don't know, like 18, 19 years old, comes up to me and he's like, and I'm like really cognizant not to be like a dick American, like I want to try to be friendly to the locals, right? So he's like tapping me on the shoulder, like the birds, look up. And I'm like, okay, so I look up and I'm like, yeah, there's birds in the sky. Like, yeah, what? Um, and then he like starts pointing to the back of my shirt, and there's like bird shit, everywhere. And and you know where I'm going with this. You're a well traveled guy, and I kind of look back. I'm like, oh yeah, and he's got his napkins and he's cleaning it off. Oh, well, I can't really get your back. Take your backpack off, and like a idiot, I put my backpack, my big bag, and my laptop bag, along the wall. And and then he's like, "Look at your jeans," and this is all kind of in broken English, and I'm like being spun around as he's like cleaning my bird stuff, um and then and then I'm like, "Oh, thank you," and then I look back at the wall where I placed my bags, and my laptop bag isn't there. And I was like tired and groggy, but there's nothing like an adrenaline rush of, oh shit, did I just get mugged? But there's a twist in the story. So I'm like, my heart's kind of like racing, like, the guy who was wiping me, ran away. And I'm like, me bolsa, and I start yelling. A good Samaritan chases his accomplice down, grabs my bag, and I get it back. Got it back with everything.
Crazy. Wow.
So first
So
hour,
hired this guy in San Francisco and started Plugg Technologies or what?
yeah. So first hour of Argentina is wild. Mugged but scammed and good Samaritan. Kind of all in one. But that was not Plug. That was another company. Still around. Grew that to about 85 engineers, but it was kind of like doing entrepreneurship on hard mode. The one thing I did have is I had cash to work with. But Argentina's rough. You can't buy stuff on credit, or at least when I was there, we had to buy 20 laptops, right? And
Oh, wait, so time out. You went backpacking down there with $2 million to set up some company.
well, I'm sorry, that was like my solo backpacking. But
Okay.
when a
Okay.
couple of years later, when I started this software company, that was a couple years later. But like I had Argentina in my mind, and despite that story, I'm like, okay, I wanna pick Argentina. So Buenos Aires is where we decided. Um and it was kind of like our entrepreneurship on hard mode. You know, you can't buy stuff on credit. So like, we were hiring engineers and I needed 20 laptops, and like everyone's like, you got to pay me cash. And like real cash. I'm
Well,
like, what do you mean?
double, triple the prices too. The import taxes on electronics. Yeah.
Yeah, like you can't, like, you guys don't take Amex? No, like it's got to be cash. And and you're right. I mean, uh tariffs are a thing for us in the States now, but this is what a lot of countries deal with all the time, So they've got what they're trying to do is fuel their domestic production, so people buy the shitty laptops that they
But
don't.
they don't make anything. It's like Brazil. They don't make half the things they put tariffs on, but say we're protecting local industry. I said, you don't make this shit. You don't make phones. You don't make any of this. What are you talking about? Like, it's mental illness. That's why at least Malay, for all his trouble things, I think there's some sneaky things that he's doing. At least he's trying to get rid of the freaking cartels that freaking own that tariff stuff. It's just so stupid because the rich people just go out of town, they buy all their stuff in Miami, they come back, Hakuna Matata, or they funnel everything in from Paraguay. Paraguay is good on that though. You can get a lot of stuff CDL Day for good prices, cheaper than USA now because they don't have the tariffs like we do. But my friends, hold on. You got the Good Samaritan saved you with the laptop, and you're doing some other venture you got money for to go, and you pick Buenos Aires to like develop a little tech hub down here with cheaper salaries. Is that what was going on? Like you were nearshoring way before it was popular. The problem is you messed up. Nowadays is where you should be down there because it's like really heating up with the tech people. They had the ETH Connect thing there, and all these crypto Web3 technology guys are starting to like flood down there, even how now it's more expensive than it was in 2022, 2023.
Yeah, it's definitely more expensive. What we've seen, so when I was there wasn't a lot of like brand new tech startups. I mean, like Mercado Libre, was there, but aside from that, it's all companies like Globant. So if anybody knows that, it's like if you've heard of Infosys, you've heard of Globant. These are just like giant companies that do software solutions. So so we didn't really have to compete with like the new tech entrepreneurs. And what we're seeing today is investors are kind of tired of paying like really high valuations for US software companies and AI companies. So what Latin America has is this nearshore time zone alignment that everybody in the podcast understands. But they've also got this like really, really solid engineering base that today they're all like founding brand new companies. They're all getting investment. They're all building new software. They're all building new AI companies, fintechs, health tech. It's awesome. But when I was there, that VC money wasn't there. So all I had to do was to steal them from like the big engineering shops, right? So I had a lot less competition when it came to hiring. But yeah, grew that to about 85 people. We had a really awesome office in Palermo with the FIFA setup and arcades, and we had a bar, and every Friday we would buy, it seemed like 50 pounds of meat, and throw it on the grill that we had.
Asado, a Friday asado, not a Sunday asado.
It was Friday. Yeah, we would do the Friday night. Yeah.
Wait, so are you the head honcho of this? You're leading this whole team of 85 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shit. And then, but who are you paying off? The investors in San Fran, or they what? I'm confused. So these engineers are working for who?
Yeah. In this case, my investor was in Asia, that I raised the money from. So, we're building a sales office in San Fran, and then the tech team was in Buenos Aires. Then we had all this. We're really like a solutions company though. So we're trying to find fintechs to build for. So, you've got the supply and demand race. Like these are good businesses when things are good. But we did a couple things that I'm not doing today with Plugg. We had everybody in the same office, which I think is something people like. But if people have their choice, they're just going to want to work from home, right? So no matter like how awesome our office was, I think they just would rather skip the commute, work from home. We were playing the currency game, which is stressful. As like the dollar goes up or the dollar goes down, how does that impact the peso? And
You weren't just paying in dollars back then. They wanted the.
they wanted dollars. We were playing the currency game and transferring dollars so we could pay them.
Okay.
And we set up the real entity and went through all that, and we wanted to do everything by the book.
It's hell, isn't it impossible? I mean, like the stuff I see is, and they have so many, like you pay them a double salary for Christmas, and then like they have certain hour. I mean, it's the most commie shit ever, like Peronism, and I like it way better contracting them out from overseas. I don't have to follow these rules necessarily. I follow every rule, but it's like the stuff I see with my girlfriend. I'm like, how do you guys even survive? the amount of weird taxes they have left and right, the rules, and they can have mental health for like a year long if they wanted. So you got to pay them. I'm like, you can't do small business here.
Oh, it was insane. It was insane. So the saving grace was it wasn't my money, right? It was an investor. But it was hard. It was really hard. And then, we also, because we treated them as employees, not contractors. So, not only did we have like that mental health situation happen to us, like it's impossible to fire people. Um, so poor performers, they know they're poor performers and they just kind of make it through that probationary period and stick it out. Um, and then, um, we had what's called a bench. So the bench in a software firm could be either crippling or amazing. Um, so we're constantly like building software, but that means that, we're kind of like stockpiling engineers and then landing the projects. So engineers are often like waiting, but we got to pay them. We got to pay them while we're waiting for projects, or maybe their 9-month project wraps up and then they're on the bench for 2 months while we try to find them a new project. So, a typical solutions company might have like 5 to 25% of their staff on the bench at any given time. But unless you're charging like really high rates, so where it gets tough in Latin America is companies that nearshore, they want to take advantage of the lower rate. So they're coming to you because they don't want to pay US salaries, right? They don't want to pay US bill rates. So our bill rates would have to be reasonable. But as soon as we had like a decent enough bench, that would eat up all of our profits. And then, we're constantly trying to sell and it's stressful. And then also, we had, and this will get into something about why I really love Latin America. We had a lot of bloat. We had architects, project managers, directors of technology. So whenever a client would want to work with us, we've got this like whole layer and the engineer is down at the bottom who's doing all the work and we've got all these people directing them. So about 4 years ago, I started Plugg, Plugg, and it's like the best of everything we had, but it kind of cut all the nonsense. So we self-select just for senior people. We do about 100 placements every year. Everybody works from home. We pay them in USD. And, something that I really appreciate. So there's like a good culture and a bad culture, of a place like Argentina. But I think, even going back to like that mugging story, there's this element, and I've heard like 100 people describe it to me like this, that Argentines are kind of like constantly looking to like for an advantage, right? So they're always kind of thinking about,
Well, beating the system because they beat it every year with their government. Whether it's not paying taxes, whether it's the crazy fluctuation of currencies, like there's always like, but it's not as bad and is like Brazil. Brazil is the Jetanino Brasileiro or whatever. Like it's the worst shit in the world, and it's just like evil. Like it's like, or I think it's just low IQ stuff. It really is. I think the Argentines, for the most part, they do. All the stats say they have higher intelligence. But that's the crazy thing about these Argentines. Like they're probably, if you need a problem solved in the world, the most weird shit, the Argentine will figure it out. They'll figure it out, but then they can't figure out their own fucking country. It's like, if instead of using all this time to see how you beat your government, why don't you guys just change the government and take it so you can focus on putting someone on the moon or something important? You know what I mean? It boggles my mind. But trust me, if you want like a real problem solved, like in the rest of the world, get an Argentine. They'll figure out a way through a system and a loophole, and you'll be like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? I remember we were trying to figure out this thing and keep going.
No, please, you first.
We were trying to figure out a certain thing in the USA, and everyone, like the American brain and these other people, like, oh, this will take 2 months, and you got to go through this, and make sure you do this step right. An Argentine person did it within 10 hours, like something that takes 2 months. And I'm like, and I sent it to the people who told me to take 2 months. They're like, how the fuck did you make that happen? Like, this is insanity, right? So it is special what they can do, like what they develop. But to your original point about how then they're always trying to be sneaky, I think it's way better than the rest of Latin America, especially Brazil. Brazil, I've been fucked so many times with that attitude, and I can't stand it. But anyways, keep going.
Yeah. So, um, you said it really well in that there's this. So not only I want to talk about some of the good stuff here because you got people that are really smart, really creative, really passionate, and at the same time, to your big point, which I fully vindicate, is it's just run by a bunch of knuckleheads decade after decade after decade. So you start to get really good at being creative, finding workarounds. And now Argentina, I think, is a little bit unique because they do have a lot of psychologists, um, and it does kind of stress them out. But they're like still relatively calm, I think, in all this chaos. But all these things kind of bode well for working horizontally. So that means you don't need all these layers. In Asia, I did a MBA in Singapore, so National University of Singapore, and Asia's like so hierarchical, right? And like everything's got to go through like the boss, and then like the mini boss, and then the other boss, and then it goes all the way to the staff. And no one wants to give bad feedback upwards. Um, they might think your idea is terrible, but they'll never tell you. Um, and I think that's like a blanket statement for Asia, but I think it's a validated blanket statement. Where I think Latin America, they're a lot more comfortable working directly with the boss. We get a lot of feedback when they don't like the idea, they don't like the tech stack, they don't like this workaround, and they've got a different recommendation. And we've spent a lot of time on Argentina, but we've got 60 people right now in Mexico, a lot of people in Brazil, Nicaragua, sprinkle people in different countries. But I think what Latin America really has going for it is it's a volatile place, but people are really good at like not having to have all these layers. They can just like talk to the boss, agree, disagree, um, do it with passion, do it with creativity, not just like to be pains in the butts. Like they have ideas and they want to share them, and that's been kind of this like secret weapon. It's we sell on time zone, we sell on price, but the quality and the ability to like just get hard stuff done, that's the magic sauce there.
Yeah, 100%. I think the creativity, like you said, dealing with the chaos for so long. I mean, like Argentina, anyone that could grow up in, especially a lot of people that are millennials now, grew up with the bank collapse, Corlato. I cannot pronounce it right. I mean, imagine your whole country just freaking stolen. You know what I mean? Like it's your parents lose everything, and now you're hiding money underneath the mattress. You're dealing with this amount of wildness and to still have a functioning society because it is. It's functioning, it's clean, it's safe. It's probably more European now than most Western European capital cities. I mean, in my opinion, I've lived in Europe, many different countries, and so they have something going on. But Argentina is by far the best I've seen in Latin America. That's probably the one country where I feel the people are giving me more than I've given them. Like it's actually like, hey, you do what you're gonna say, and then I do what I'm gonna say. You're gonna get paid, and just good stuff overall. I've not been screwed over at all, really, in Argentina, which that's not the normal case for a lot of people. But I think they're good people. I really do. Um, the one thing about Latin America, it just business in USA is just so smooth, okay? It's just orderly, it's functioning. It's like I just said, I say I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna pay you, you're gonna do this, and we're not gonna screw each other over. Of course, it does happen. I think it's getting more and more Latinized, the USA, with business, by far. But there's just nothing like doing business in USA. But I think if you could take that Latino creativity, the energy, the passion, obviously the lower cost of living, the salaries, and get them working with the Americans in USA, it could be a total success. You know what I mean? But doing business down here, like in the thick of things, fuck, man, I don't think it's ever going to change. It's all about corruption. Here's another thing too. It's like the American is direct, right? we're very direct with certain things, and the Latino has to like kind of soften it up and be best friends. It's like, hey, do this. I don't hate you because I'm telling you to do it. Just fucking do it. You know what I mean? So I think the ones that get it, they do unreal. I think there's amazing talent in Latin America. It's unfortunate now, like I've been saying it for a long time. It's like we let in, and God bless these people, but a lot of them are like, the bottom classes in Latin America. They're the ones on the streets doing crimes, and we make it impossible for the guys that are model citizens to come and work in USA. Like it should be reversed. Instead of the border, people running over the border, we should have these amazing, talented people come here for better opportunity. But yeah, that was a lot of points. What do you think, my friend?
Yeah, yeah. I think there's I mean, just like the European part, I want to hit on because it's a beautiful country. I mean, it is insane. I've been all over Mendoza, Patagonia, Tandil, which is like the salami capital, all over the place. You can drink the water, like the water is potable, like every time I go to Mexico, I get sick, but you don't have to worry about that in a place like Argentina. And um tree-lined streets and beautiful cafes, and you could sit there for a few hours and you're not rushed. And I learned how to like relax a little bit, after 5 years in San Francisco and my phone's in front of my face all day long. And then I can just like chill and read the newspaper and like, you know, um, and like write and read and sit at a cafe for 3 hours and like nobody hassles you. It's um it's really good, I think, for Americans to experience that, because we live in this like everything's urgent, everything feels like life or death. We're killing ourselves, for what, right? So I think I've got like a good balance now in Hawaii, but that time in Latin America really made me like reshift my values, I think, in the right way.
Yeah, 100%. We brought up the therapist point per capita. And yes, I think there is a lot to mental illness. I'm not sure why. Maybe being so far to the South Pole or Antarctica. I don't know. Maybe because they sleep in, do all that kind of stuff. But I also know it's a part of the culture to talk about these problems to non just family members, right? And I think that's great. Like if you don't have someone you trust full that you can expose all this stuff that's going on in your head, then go talk to a professional for sure. It's not like stigmatized as in say the USA, right? Where everyone makes fun of the Argentines. Oh, you're all crazy people, but they live in chaos, but they're not that crazy. Like I think it's over said because of that statistic. I do think it is the best balance between Europe and Latin America. Like you get, real good pieces of European lifestyle, and then you get a little chaos, wild stuff like the Latino that make you feel alive. Because I know there's no sane gringo that can live in Latin America full time. I think 6 months is the absolute cut up, and you got to go back to Europe, go to USA, just be in civilization in quotes. Okay, I say that, but I think in Argentina it might be possible. I wouldn't do it because I like good weather a lot of the times, and Argentina starts getting cold and yuck. But no, I think you're 100% right about the Latino getting the most out of life and enjoying it, especially like the Argentine. But I was gonna ask you something. What comes to your mind after that? And I'm gonna go to these questions.
Yeah,
Oh,
what I was gonna say is, oh yeah, go
keep going.
for it.
I will need to know how you get the best out of the Latino with the work. Okay, so like I said, the directness is causing me lots of problems. I think their way of doing things can get frustrating for me. How have you been able to handle that and make it successful for the people you plug and so forth?
Yeah, so not everyone's gonna be a great person to work with, but man, I've been lucky. I've had more than a handful of people that I've worked with for 7, 8 years, and I've taken them to different companies with me, and they just get it. All the stuff we talked about, scrappy, creative, all that. Um, when I contrast it with Asia, and people are like, I'm not so all the way Latin America that it's always the best thing. Um, I tend to look at Asia, because like this isn't me. I'm kind of a I've got 5 different companies, I chase shiny things, fly by the seat of my pants, stuff sounds interesting, I try to find a way to figure it out. And I think that works really well in Latin America. But that means that I don't have like all the processes kind of figured out ahead of time. Like I don't have the box built for them to work in. And I don't think Argentines or really Latin Americans as a whole want to be in the box. I think they like that, like they match really well to that. Where even to your point, where like I've got this kind of crazy problem. I want to build this, and they're right there with you, kind of building it, figuring stuff out problem by problem. Try doing that in Asia. Maybe I'm just had bad luck, but I think Asia, you've got to come in with all the defined processes all ready to go, and they just kind of follow it. And no questions asked. You're not going to get pushback, right? Where Latin America, they'll challenge you. Um, so I think it really depends on like what kind of leader you are, like a self reflection. If you're a process person, I'd go with Asia. And by the way, you're going to get even better value for your money. But if you're like me and you just haven't figured it all out yet, and you kind of want a team to figure it out with, you're not gonna go wrong with Latin America.
Yeah, very good comparison between the two. Really good, actually. My friend, okay, so Plug Tech, so you're doing senior engineers, which means high level paying jobs. You're trying to plug, right, which is smart. But yeah, like you said, a lot of dudes, maybe solopreneurs. The dudes getting contractors like me. Is this Plug Technologies is still good for that? Can you do that? No, or
Yeah. So, are you referring to like kind of like the virtual assistants or people like that that can kind of
yeah,
plug
yeah,
different?
yeah,
Yeah,
plug
yeah,
and plays.
totally, yeah, yeah. We've done a couple of those. I wouldn't say it's like our sweet spot. We've got we do about 100 placements a year. 90 of them are technical people, right? But every once in a while, so like I've got a buddy who owns it's just like him in the Midwest, and he owns a really cool watch and apparel company. And he's like an entrepreneur and constantly like shaking stuff up, trying to figure it out. And he's got beautiful products. So we just placed like a virtual assistant with him, to kind of help him through like a wide variety of stuff. And he doesn't have the step by step figured out. He's like, hey, I've got customers that need things, and I've got new orders coming in, and I need to do social media posts, but I don't have like a process for any of these things. So we hooked him up, and he's been really happy. Um, we've got Nicaragua. We haven't talked about a lot, but Central America is really, I think, going head to head with the Philippines now in terms of call center type people, like call center, back office, admin. But your question though about the virtual assistants, I think if I were like a small business, maybe with like one other contractor, maybe you're doing this for the very first time, I don't think you need a company like ours. I think it'd be a little bit overkill. Um, and you could start just like I did. My very first VA I hired over a decade ago in the Philippines. And it was fine. I did it all on Upwork. I wouldn't say Upwork is the place you want to go to when you figured it out. And like now you've got a couple contractors and you're ready to scale. Upwork and Fiverr are where you go when you just need to like do this, and you're going to make mistakes. And that's just part of being an entrepreneur. You're going to hire the wrong people. But I think there's like something good about the DIY, do it yourself. Um, Figure out your job description, how you're going to test people, what your budget is, how you're going to price it, how you're going to measure their work. And I guarantee you, if you hire 2 people one of them is probably going to suck, and you're going to be like, why did I hire this person? But it's going to make you that much better. And all this stuff is compounding. It's all cumulative. You're going to get so much better at hiring. But when you're ready to kind of scale a little bit, you need something unique you can't really find on Upwork. You've got a little bit more budget. Maybe you're trying to look for a team. That's really where Plugg is going to come into play, or like other agencies like us. Where um, we just got a big Rolodex. Like 40, 50,000 people that we've talked to all throughout Latin America. We know them. We've got notes on all these people, their comp, how to contact them, what they're good for. Some of them that, we would never call again, right? Because, part of this is vetting them out. That's when I would come to a company like Plugg. But if you're just kind of getting started and this is exciting, this like global landscape of talent and labor, I mean, this hasn't existed forever, like a long time ago. If you were a small business entrepreneur, you didn't have access to this type of talent. So it's really cool. It's really game changing. But I think there's something important about kind of going through the process yourself with the first hire or two.
Were you inspired by Tim Ferriss?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
not. I did read the 4 Hour Work Week way back in 2010. Um, was like super intrigued by this like virtual assistants, and I think his examples, like I reread it the other day or the other year, and I think his examples are a little silly now, but but I think the spirit of it just makes me really think about leverage. Like I should be doing $1,000 an hour type activities, right? And it all kind of leverages, but I didn't start at $1,000 activities, right? I started at like $20 an hour, and then, you just kind of keep going up. But every time you level up, you need to find leverage the step right below you, and that's what the Tim Ferriss book helped me see.
Hey, what's the average rate you're getting these plump people? What are they getting paid normally?
Yeah. So what we're billing our customers at is usually for like remember these are senior developers, and everything's all included. Everything's all included in that rate. So generally, for like AI and data engineers, like the hottest stuff right now, bill rates are usually in the 60s per hour, 60 US. And if it's like a kind of more common, like a React Angular, but like modern technology, in the 50s, and maybe it's like more legacy, like a .NET or a Java, maybe in the 40s per hour.
I got an AI guy. I'm gonna introduce you. I actually met him when I was living in Curitiba. He's doing some projects for me. Good kid. He's a fucking genius with all this stuff now. So I'm gonna introduce you. Maybe it'll be a good fit. But hey, I got a couple things on here. Let's get to these questions here. I like these ones. The H-1B chaos is sending companies scrambling towards LATAM developers almost as an emergency option. Is that actually good for LATAM talent, or does being the panic choice come with a cost?
Oh,
Is that a good question or no?
yeah, about the panic. I don't think anybody I talk to is thinking panic, but just generally what's happening, is India had been dominating this H-1B world forever. For usually it was like 65,000 was their quota per year, and the Tatas, Infosys, Cognizant, would basically import people on H-1B visas because it's only a $3,000 cost, and then uh, you know if your audience knows history and like the world of indentured servitude, where people that wanted to come from Europe to the States in like the 1700s somebody would basically sponsor them and pay for them, and then they would have to work for that sponsor for 7 years. This is what modern day indentured servitude is the H-1B. But now, at $100,000 price point instead of 3,000, you're not going to import 65,000 people, on your global solutions company. There's no margin in that because you can't pass all that on to your customers. So that really means it's like a world of haves and have-nots. and you only have like OpenAI and companies that are, raising billions of dollars, can justify that. So that means that all these engineering jobs, unfortunately, are not really going to be onshored because the stuff you would give your H-1Bs wasn't brand new product development. It was like the old legacy stuff, bug fixing, things like that. So Americans have kind of like skipped over that. They're doing new product development, architecture, not the legacy bug fixing, and it's too expensive for that anyway. So that work is either being re-offshored back to India, but more commonly is now Latin America. The 2020s are really the decade for Latin America. You're getting a lot more work that's being offshored out, that's being nearshored there. It's on everyone's mind because now they don't have to sacrifice time zone. They're not doing 3 o'clock in the morning calls, and it's barely more expensive than it was to send that work to India. So Latin America, I don't think it's the panic choice. I think naturally all the wind was in the sails anyway for Latin America. And there's just a lot more people that are more aware of it. And it blows my mind that like 10, 20 years ago, we weren't nearshoring as much as we are today. Like this has been in our backyard all along. And all the benefits that were 20 years ago are still the benefits today. But yeah, it's like people think they discovered fire or something, but it's been there all along.
Yeah, why do you think that is? It's really weird. Obviously now too, Trump and the Donroe Doctrine, we're trying to kick out all foreign influence and keep everything in the Western Hemisphere. So I think it's only going to continue to expand. But why do you think this was so foreign? Obviously, the American believes everything below Mexico is Mexico. Just soccer Mexico and Asado Mexico, and everyone's a savage, and there's favelas everywhere, which is obviously not the case. But what do you think the reason was that we just didn't hide in our own backyard? I mean, just the Southeast Asians were ahead of the tech curve, the Chinese, they just, what's the story? And then again, though, 20 years ago, Brazil was like, they were making good money. The real and the dollar were close. They were going on vacations, Miami. Every, millennial did 15 years old, they went to Disney World. So they weren't poor. Argentines used to be one of the richest countries a long time ago. Even to this day, like people, they love, the Argentine is like really emotional on social media. Okay. So they love to fight with people and, oh, we're the best and all that kind of stuff. So people say, oh, you're poor. Your average salary is this, inflation. They're not poor. Okay. Half the economy is offline. Okay. I know a lot of people that are living very good middle class lives, probably the best average life besides maybe Chile. I have not been to Chile in Latin America that I've seen, that I've witnessed. Like the average person is still living pretty good. But yeah, tell me why you think the nearshoring didn't happen in the past.
Yeah, well, I think you hit it on the head with your opening there on the question. Asia, I mean, China's been the world's factory, India's been the world's IT center, and the Philippines have been the world's call center. And these three countries were like just really, really good at organizing and selling to the West. They were just really, really good at that. And I don't know, Latin America just couldn't really get their act together. But I think at the same time, 20, 30 years ago, when like these Asian countries really started to dominate, um, companies were like very bottom line focused. Like, oh my God, you know how much money I can save doing this? And they wouldn't look at the trade. So like a really good example, and I might shit on Asia a little bit here, but a really good example is, let's say you call United Airlines, about something, and
I cannot stand it. I even met a recently. It's the worst thing I ever went through. I said, we're paying $500 a month and I can't even fucking speak to someone that speaks native English. I mean, it's horrible. It's terrible. Oh,
you um did you get connected to somebody in the Philippines?
no, it's Indian. They had someone, yeah, and
Yeah.
like $500 a month, and I could hear a call room background, like noise. I said, guys, like, I couldn't understand them at all. I mean, I was shocked that this was even happening.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's almost always India or the Philippines is the call center. Um, you can barely understand what they're saying. If you have a very standard issue, like hey, I just want to change my seat. Like, okay. But if there's anything outside of this box, like, I want to reroute through Dallas, or I want to use my miles on this flight to upgrade to first class, or whatever. Like, there's anything not inside this hyper processed workflow that they're used to, everyone's going to have a heart attack. They're going to freak out. They can't solve your issue. And then the frustration that we experience as consumers is really high. And this is the kind of stuff that has nothing to do with flying on the airplane, nothing to do with the experience. By the way, like, United's okay. I could have picked any airline, but you could love the experience of being on the airline, the service, the flight attendants, the food, the on-time departures. You could love all that, but all of it is destroyed by this horrible experience you had with their call center. And you're like, man, screw these guys. I'm not flying United anymore, right? So I don't think United and all these companies like factored that cost in 30 years ago. They're just like, they're not factoring all the churn from people like just being frustrated beyond belief, banging their phone on their head, like, why are you not getting me? They didn't factor in the customer churn. And the same thing with software. Sure, it's like dirt cheap, but there's a lot of rework, and there's also, like, projects that have to get redone over and over because stuff was missed, or uh, like you just keep losing day after day after day because you're waiting for stuff to you're waiting for deliverables, and the deliverables are wrong, and then you got to give feedback. So all that was just kind of lost. Yeah, so that churn it's costly. Nobody's really factored that in. Same with India and the software, all that stuff was the lowest prices ever, but the project still costs the same because they've got to redo all the stuff in the software chain and the software development lifecycle, and all these bugs were found, you've got to redo. So the work adds up. China, like, the reputation China has, everybody knows, is it was made in China, might be junk, right? It's not going to last forever. So cheap has cost, right? And I think that's all starting to come to center. Plus, with COVID, people are more comfortable working remote, but they want the same time zone. So, like, everything is wind in the sails right now for Latin America. But yeah, nobody was really thinking about it before, because I don't think Latin America knew how to sell it. And they could also never win the price game. Sure, it's cheaper than the States, but you're not going to compete with Asia from Latin America. Um, and companies weren't concerned about anything but price 20, 30 years ago. Now they care a lot more about time zone and quality. So that's really going to hurt Asia.
Yeah, great breakdown. Yeah, God bless the Asian bros. Like, I have a lot of good ones, but when I get on the phone and it's just like, oh, I was so freaking frustrated the other day. So I've been on 10 different calls, and I got a couple American ones, but then they teach, Meta's the worst customer service. They teach them to just put you in circles and never like move on to someone, and you have to start. We got a couple demands going on against them right now, so I think it's gonna work, because they're banning accounts all the time now with their AI software, and it's crushing a client of mine right now. But oh, okay, beautiful, my friend. Last topic. Um, all this stuff about outsourcing, which, Trump, very isolationist, bring jobs back, bring manufacturing back. I believe it's to get the factories in here, then have the AI take over. So we just have it all in house. And then you have to, UBI, universal basic income, the Americans. Cause like, you can't have a population that's going to go freaking crazy. I think that could possibly work. I don't want to live in no commie utopia, but, where do you see this being a part of this, quote unquote problem that a lot of people say, hey, keep the money with the Americans and stop just outsourcing for a tenth of the price?
Yeah, I think that it goes both ways, right? If you're going to sell to the world, right, then the talent of the world is also applicable, right? So if you want to be able to sell your products globally, then every company today is a global company. And if you're honestly, like that mindset of protectionism, if anybody's listening, this is what destroyed all these countries that we're talking about. This protectionist mindset. Um, this is what I think I really respected about Singapore when I was there. And Singapore is like one of the most developed countries, if not the number one in the world. And Singapore Airlines is like a top airline, and Changi Airport is a top airport. What people don't realize is it's not like this isn't like a Gulf state where they take all their riches and just like fund it. So it's this kind of like state sponsored airport or state sponsored airline. They Singapore Airlines became super competitive by finding ways to be the best without any state sponsored support. So that means like they did it by merit. They stood on their own 2 feet. They have the most luxurious front of the house, but the back of the house, they're like inventory and pencils. Like it is relentless and ruthless in how they cut costs. And I think that's the mindset everyone has to have. It doesn't matter if you're in Cincinnati or Florianopolis. You're a global company, and you can't think that someone's there to save you.
Yeah, 100%. But when the H-1B thing was happening and they had 10 dudes living in one apartment and eating up all these different salaries and making housing insane for the people that have been there for 50 years, they're going to become problems, okay? And this is where like the Silicon Valley brain, I even push back. So I do a lot of this stuff. I contract out. I live a global lifestyle, Geoarbitrage, all these different things, because I understood, okay, hey, I don't want to make the world change for me to be happy. Okay, so if the big boys are doing it, if Trump is hiring all these seasonal workers for a fraction of the cost, but then saying on the campaign trail, we're going to save your jobs. Well, fuck, I gotta join the big boys otherwise I'm going to get eaten up, right? But then I look at it as like a country standpoint. Like, no, I want people, Americans, to grow up how I did with, the suburbs that are clean, that are, people that come there, you're going to adapt to our culture, you're going to appreciate, assimilate. And that's not happening a lot. You know what I mean? If you just become an economic zone, you're giving away a lot of things. And people say, oh, well, isolationism, look at Argentina, right? It collapsed with Peronism. It became from the fourth richest to the chaoticness that has happened to that country the past 70 years. But Argentina didn't have B-2 bombers, okay? B-21 Raiders, the greatest military the world has freaking ever seen. That's dropping bombs thousands of miles away from home. God bless the troops that died recently. It's sad, but no one else has done this in the history of humanity. They kidnapped Maduro within 3 hours, right? So I think that's backing up the isolationism. I think with AI, and they have to have a bunch of AI guys, advising them that it could be possible, especially if we win this AI race, which I think we're going to win it, is bring all the shit back, okay? Have the AI people run everything, give universal basic high income somehow, keep the people happy, keep the culture alive. But yeah, then it's like, has capitalism reached its peak? And now, like, well, I think Marx said that capitalism has to run its course to create this communist utopia. So there's like a balance. There's some sort of nuance because I'm as capitalistic as it gets, but also I'm like, fuck, America has a great culture, beautiful things that we have to also somewhat protect. We can't have a million, billion. There's billions of Indians right now. There's 300 million Americans. If you take a billion of them there and put them here, it's going to change, and no one wants to live in India really, right? Because they got their own problems that they made.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's I think the concept of borders and culture, which I agree with, right? And I think the magic of America is best man for the job, capitalism, and it's um, when people say diversity is our strength, I don't I don't think that's the right thing. I think it's really about our values, right? So it doesn't matter what you look like. Who cares what you look like? It's about do we all have the same shared values? But I think that that's different from like global talent marketplace, of we should all try to be competitive. And you know, we as Americans, I think sometimes we dwell on what we don't have, like, well, I can't live in a $200 a month apartment in, Vietnam. Um, or like my mortgage payment is $2,000. Like how can I compete with this person in Vietnam? Um, yeah, but you also had a much easier life, than this person, and you had access to so many more things than this person. So don't dwell on what you don't have, be grateful for what you have, but recognize you got to compete with everybody.
Yeah, and of course, I want the Elon Musk to come to USA. I want the top of the top to come and continue innovating and changing the world like the USA has done for however many decades. But there's just some sort of balance, okay? Because the Silicon Valley bros like have turned. There's no, I think, loyalty, and I don't want to say like you need to be okay loyal to your country and then patriotic if they're not treating you good, okay? Like I don't want to go die overseas for foreign countries, like which we've been in certain wars because of that. And but also it's like fuck, man, I want my country to be my country. Like it gave me all these opportunities and so forth, and we have to respect that and make sure the next generation can grow up that way. But I am 100% for people who want to assimilate to USA, that like our values, that want to contribute. Okay. No leeches, no people that want to just take, take, take. If you can do that, that's great.
Agree.
Hi, my friend. A beautiful podcast. A little controversial. You don't Plugg Technologies doesn't support anything I said. We just had a conversation. You know what I mean? Um, what can the people they can find you on Instagram or give your pitches for the audience?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, fun conversation. So I appreciate you having me. Website is the best way to find us, and that's going to be plugg.tech, TECH. And there's a whole contact us form. If you want to talk more, fill it out, and I'll make sure it goes to me.
Amazing. It was a great time, Brian. Great to have you on. But tell your people, your media people, stop sending the AI media emails. I get too many of these all the time, and they say the dumbest things that it usually take like a bio, and I have the same things I put in every bio, right? At the start, like, where to find me and different stuff. And they just take this part and say, hey, it was amazing what you said here. I said the podcast wasn't even about that. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? So tell your person, but he got you on. So, Hakuna Matata. But hey, everyone else, live bold.